If Elias Vance was a man looking for answers, Sarah Miller was a woman just looking for a horizon. She wasn't a researcher or a professional. She was a solo hiker with a high-end GPS and a habit of documenting her trips for the world to see. On August 14th, Sarah checked into the North Ridge trailhead. Her goal was simple, a 3-day loop through the limestone corridors of the gray zone. But as the sun began to dip on the first night, Sarah realized the map in her hands no longer matched the land beneath her feet. This isn't a story about getting lost. It's a story about being found by something that had been practicing how to look like a home.
Sarah Thorne didn't trust people, but she trusted gear. She spent $4,000 on her solo camping kit. Her tent was a high-altitude, 4-season Interceptor, a geodesic dome of reinforced ripstop nylon and carbon fiber poles designed to withstand 90-mile-per-hour winds on the slopes of Everest. To her, that tent was more than a shelter. It was a boundary. Inside that orange dome, the world couldn't touch her. The mosquitoes, the rain, the judging eyes of society, they all stopped at the zipper. She set up camp in the Dead Peak Basin, a place so remote that the silence felt like a physical weight on her chest. It was the kind of place where you could hear your own hair brush against your collar. Sarah liked it that way. She zipped herself in for the night, double-looping the internal carabiners on the door. She felt like a pilot in a cockpit, safe, contained. But as the clock hit 3 a.m., the temperature inside the tent began to rise. Not the heat of a summer night, but a wet, humid heat. The kind of heat you feel when someone is standing too close to you, breathing on your neck. Sarah sat up, her thermal base layers sticking to her skin. She reached for her flashlight, but the air felt thick, viscous, as if she were moving through syrup. Then she heard it. Zzz. It was the sound of a zipper, but it wasn't metallic. It was the sound of something sharp being dragged across dry silk. Zzz. Sarah looked up, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. There were no zippers at the top of the Interceptor. The ceiling was a solid piece of reinforced fabric. "Who's there?" she whispered. Her voice sounded flat, as if the tent walls were absorbing the sound before it could even travel a foot. "I can't see you with the light on, Sarah. Turn it off so I can come in." Sarah didn't turn the light off. She grabbed her bushcraft knife and lunged for the main door. She needed to be outside. She needed the cold air and the wide open sky. She grabbed the metal zipper tab of the front door, but as her fingers closed around it, she let out a muffled scream. The metal was soft. It felt like warm saltwater taffy. It smeared between her fingers, dripping onto the floor in gray, viscous globs. She looked at the door. The teeth of the zipper had vanished. In their place was a smooth, seamless ridge of orange material. The tent was no longer a piece of gear. It was a single, continuous skin. The zzz sound started again. It began to circle the tent, faster and faster. Every time the sound passed a certain point, the tent grew smaller. The carbon fiber poles, rated for hurricane winds, began to groan. They were bending inward. The walls were now so close, Sarah could reach out and touch them without extending her arms. She slashed at the nylon with her knife, but the blade didn't cut. The fabric felt rubbery, elastic. It stretched around the knife like gum, then snapped back, unharmed. "You chose a good one, Sarah. High denier nylon, very nutritious. "What are you?" she shrieked, the air growing so thin she had to gasp for every word. The shadow outside leaned its head against the fabric. The face was huge, a broad, flat indentation in the orange skin. "I'm the thing that waited for the gear to get good enough. I'm the thing that realized humans would rather be trapped than vulnerable." Sarah felt a sharp pain in her ankle. She looked down and saw that the floor of the tent was no longer flat. It was growing hairs, tiny microscopic orange filaments that were boring into her socks, weaving themselves into her flesh. She tried to pull away, but she was anchored. The tent wasn't just holding her, it was merging with her. The poles finally snapped. Loud snapping sound. The structure collapsed on top of her, pinning her to the floor. The orange fabric was now draped over her face like a wet mask. She could see the moonlight through the nylon, a dim, sickly glow. She saw the silhouette of the thing outside. It wasn't a monster. It was a giant, pale hand, slowly rolling the tent up like a sleeping bag. "Stay still, Sarah. The transition is almost complete. You won't be a hiker anymore. You'll be part of the fortress." The air was gone. Sarah's world was nothing but the smell of chemicals and the sound of her own frantic, muffled sobbing. She felt her skin becoming slick, her nerves firing with 1,000 tiny electrical shocks as the nylon fibers replaced her own muscle tissue. She wasn't dying, she was being reconfigured. She felt her lips fuse together. She felt her eyes being covered by a layer of translucent orange film. And then the final sound. Zzz. A new zipper appeared, right down the center of what used to be her chest. A week later, a group of college students found the campsite. They were amazed. "Check this out," one of them said, pointing to a perfectly preserved, high-end orange tent. "It looks brand new. Who would just leave this out here?" They approached the tent. It was beautiful. The fabric was taut, shimmering in the sun. "Wait," the student said, pulling his hand back. "Does that tent sound like it's breathing?" From inside the tent, a voice whispered, a voice that sounded like Sarah Thorne, but with a rhythmic, mechanical click behind every word. "Come in. It's safe in here. The world can't touch you." The student laughed and grabbed the ivory zipper. As he pulled it down, the sound wasn't a metal slide on plastic. It was the sound of a long, jagged nail dragging across a living lung.
The search for Sarah lasted 17 days. They found her pack, her stove, and her boots neatly placed outside a tent that hadn't been there the day before. But Sarah herself, she was gone. The GoPro footage ends with her sitting by a fire that wasn't producing any heat, talking to someone she called Mother, though she was completely alone in the frame. The last thing the camera caught before the battery died wasn't a monster or a ghost. It was just the sound of a zipper sliding open from the outside. If you're planning a trip into the backcountry this season, stick to the marked trails. And if you feel like the trees are standing in the wrong places, don't wait for the sun to go down. Just run.
Don't let the silence follow you home. We'll see you in the next archive.